also be trying to get our federal candidates to come and participate as well. So that's the beauty of these even years, is that we have some really interesting races. We have very interesting things to talk about with these candidates. And these kind of forums allow you to hear from them directly and interact with them. Hopefully most of the candidates can stick around after they've had their time up at the table, and feel free to walk up to them and ask them questions on a one-on-one if you're not comfortable having your question read. We do read all of the questions. We do not take questions directly from the audience. So with that, there are note cards on that table and some pens. If over the course of, say, this particular panel, something comes up, write it on a card and raise your hand. We'll try to get to all the questions, but we do have four methods that we're going to be talking about today. So it's possible we may not get all questions. Also, when I get bundles of questions, so questions that are very similar, I may not read your exact question, but I will read a question that gets to the intent of what you're trying to look for. I also eliminate all swear words. You'd be surprised. I don't expect that from anybody in this audience, but they do crop up once in a while. We also get the occasional you, and I can imagine that the person writing it was just exclamating and one big hand, or if they were online typing with one finger. I try to eliminate the tone. I want this to be neutral. I want you to actually just hear from the candidates what their positions are. That doesn't mean that some of these issues just in and of themselves don't generate some kind of angst for people, some anxiety. We're going to hear questions about some tough subjects today. And so that naturally creates emotions for people. Try to keep it in check. You may hear something that you disagree with. That's okay. That's why we're here. And that's why you're listening, so you know how to vote when the time comes. So the grunts and groans and ughs and heckles from the audience, I will point you out. I will make sure everybody knows who you are. No, I won't. No, I don't. Those are kind of the ground rules. This is a respectful forum. We have, I think, a really good reputation, which is why I think people, one, attend them, but more importantly, why they're willing to sit on the panel. So we're proud of that, and we want you to help us continue to make that part of our legacy as forums for future candidates. So I'm going to do just a quick check because we're just a little bit ahead of where I thought we might be right now. And so I'm going to give everyone just a couple of minutes, unless nobody stands up, to get a card and write questions. If everybody feels like they've got their questions up here, then we're good to go. So I'm just going to look and pretend like I'm really busy for a few seconds, and then we'll get into the questions. We did receive some questions online by email before this event, so we do have some of those starter questions as well. And so what's going to happen, candidates? Thank you. What's going to happen, candidates, is we have one mic. So as you answer the questions, we'll just have you pass it down or to the appropriate persons. What I would normally do is kind of shake it up. That makes it a little difficult with the mic situation, like asking Darcy and then sending it to Bishop Scarborough. Not awesome setup. So I'm going to be respectful of that. And then we're going to have opening remarks, and this will apply for all of the panels. They're going to be 2.5 minutes. For the candidates, at the 1 minute mark, as in 1 minute left, you're going to see a green card. At the 30-second mark, you're going to see a yellow card. And at the 10-second mark, which means you need to be wrapping it up, you're going to see this lovely orange card. I might have said orange-red. Dark orange-red card. I think I told you red in your emails. And then each candidate will have 1 minute to answer questions. If there's a particularly complex question, we may add some additional time. I'll let the timekeeper know, and then I'll tell you what to be looking for when the time comes. And then they'll have 1 minute to wrap up. That's their time to kind of process everything that's come at them in these questions and give you their one last shot at hurrah, this is why you should vote for me. And that's their job. They're here today to tell you why they're the best candidate for these positions. So with that county commissioner race, just give me 1 second to get all of these in order. And we've got legislative, yes. Okay. And I have this beautifully written question. It's got a lot of preamble. I may condense it. Don't feel offended if I do that to the individual that wrote it, because there's some interesting pieces in the preamble, I think, that set up the question. But it may get condensed a little bit. So with that, make sure I've got everybody's questions. I am also going to be monitoring the chat. We've got a fair number of people online. In fact, we have 21, I think. 21. Well, but that includes 2 in here and my personal computer up here. So we've got 21 folks that are joining us outside of this room. And so I'm going to keep my eyes on the chat. If you do submit a question in chat, please keep it to the panel that's in front of us right now. If you want a question for the representative race, for example, please wait until that panel is up here. My brain can only do so many things at once, and that will not be one of them, is remembering where a question came up 20 minutes earlier. So with that, thank you everybody for being here. And we're going to open up our introductory remarks, and we are going to start with position 1, which is Commissioner Starr and Bruce Loveland. Candidate Spink was not able to make it today. He had a conflict, but I would encourage you to reach out to him. He has offered many ways for you to contact him, so please do so. So we will start with you, Commissioner Starr.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Erin Starr, and I am your current county commissioner serving the people of Tillamook County in position 1. For those of you who don't know me, I've lived in Tillamook County for just over 20 years, having moved from Maupin in Central Oregon. I am married. I have a daughter in college and a son in the fire department in Jefferson County. I'm also blessed to have 2 beautiful granddaughters. Prior to being elected to office, I had a 25-year career serving my communities in the nonprofit world. I served in positions including a field supervisor, program manager, deputy director, fundraiser, and finally executive director. And I worked in specialties including youth education, environmental stewardship, domestic violence, senior housing, and issues of poverty and homelessness. Throughout my career, I gained valuable skills in managing projects, managing budgets, and managing people. As a fundraiser, I honed my skills in bringing in necessary funding, and as an executive director, developed my skills in community collaboration and leadership. When asked why I originally ran for commissioner, I always say housing. I became involved in the work to bring housing to Tillamook County as one of the founders of the first Housing Task Force, and then again as a founder on the Tillamook County Housing Commission. I could see that as the director of care, my previous position, I was limited in the scope of housing work that I could do. And I felt that as a commissioner, I could have more impact on this work. I partnered with Commissioner Bartline when he was commissioner, and so it seemed a natural fit to step in behind him, continuing the housing work that we had been doing together when he retired. I was first elected in May of 2020 and began my term in 2021. Starting during COVID made for a challenging beginning to this position. I believe that my history as a proven leader with strong connections across the community made it possible to hit the ground running even in difficult times. In the past 3 years, I've led many successful efforts in the areas of raising funding for housing and homelessness and response to opioids in our community, bringing in over $3 million in grant funding. I've worked closely with the county treasurer and human resources department to make needed adjustments to the county retirement plan to provide significant savings to the county. I've led efforts to close gaps on the Oregon Coast Trail and begin construction on the Salmonberry Trail. I feel that my experience in agency operations and management with my many years of community engagement and leadership have given me the skills and connections needed to continue to be a successful commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Loveland.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you all for being here. 2.5 minutes is not much time, and so I'm gonna kind of jump to I think some of the differences between the candidates for position 1. First off, I've been a 24-year business owner, successful business owner in Tillamook County. Been on the planning commission, was on the reservation, short-term SDR committee, sorry. Been on the fire department and NETARS oversight, sanitary district 2. One of the stark differences between Aaron and myself is that I actually ran a business for 24 years and still running a successful business. A nonprofit is a whole different kind of an entity, and God bless you for doing that. But I want to say that what is happening in the county is we're directing a lot of resources to her passion, homelessness, drug addiction, and housing. Now, housing is an important issue, but you got to distinguish what we're talking about with housing. Are we talking about workforce housing? Are we talking about affordable housing or low-income housing? And I think from the commissioner's first 3 years here, it's been basically low-income housing. And that's what the focus has been. And I think we're greater than that as a county. Those are 3 important areas that her passion is. But I think we should be looking beyond that. We've got a real tough time with reduced revenues. We've got the largest deficit budget in Tillamook County history that was adopted for this year. And it's looking like it's going to be adopted again for next year. I'm all about fiscal control. We've got to live within our means. We can't, looking for additional taxes. I think it's the wrong approach. I think the county has to decide what we want to be as a county in terms of how we want to, what areas we want to be involved in. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I'm really pleased to be here, and we can give us some more detail later. Thank you.
So now we're going to move to position number 2 for the county commissioner race, and we'll start with candidate Fournier.
Hello, my name is Paul Fournier. I'm the guy with the big van out there, in case you didn't see it. I've been a resident of the county for about 29 years, going on 30. Throughout that time, I've served as a first responder, first as a volunteer firefighter, then as an EMT for 10 years. And somewhere in there became a police officer for the Tillamook County Sheriff's Office. While doing that, I was also a writer for the Headlight Herald. So I've got some deep roots throughout the whole county here. As a deputy, I worked most of my time as a detective, a major crimes detective, which means I dealt with a lot of the child abuse cases, narcotics, a lot of the problems that we're facing today. I've had firsthand knowledge of. Also the mental health crisis that we're dealing with. I dealt with that on a day-to-day basis. I decided to run because I was concerned about workforce and affordable housing. I was concerned about our deteriorating infrastructure. I feel like we've been kicking the can down the road on roads. Anybody here that lives on a secondary road like I do knows what I'm talking about. With potholes, the whole village of Oceanside, it seems like one big pothole, but it's not necessarily, it's not our department's fault. Same thing with community development. I'm a big supporter of our department heads. As my plan as a commissioner is to be supportive to our department heads, give them the tools, the resources, and the revenue that they need. I'm big on alternative revenue. I'm big on us finding new sources of revenue. My management skills or experience is limited, but as a leader, as a police officer, as a field training officer, as a captain in the fire department, I believe that management is more effective when you are lead by example. And it's not micromanaging, it's showing people that you're also willing to get your hands dirty and work. I will be a working commissioner. I will myself look for alternative funding and grant opportunities. We've got to solve some problems with affordable and available childcare. We've got to go back to the basics: infrastructure, childcare, housing, public safety, and economic growth and managing that. Thank you.
And candidate Jones.
Hi, I'm Darcy Jones.
Is the mic, you have to hold it closer.
Closer. I was actually born here in Tillamook. I've lived here all my life. I actually went to school at Fairview, which is just down the road. I've had my own company for 32 years. I've been a licensed general contractor. I did, well, I've had to write paychecks for 32 years. I actually know what that all means. I've been on the school board in Nesca Valley for 16 years. So I know what it's like to be in charge of public employees. I know how all that works. And I went to the budget committee meeting they had last week. The county's talking about our budget. And our budget has a $4 million hole. And actually in excess of $4 million. Well, a lot of the problem here is that our Department of Community Development has fell so far behind, they won't allow any affordable housing because they keep making it cost more. You can't build affordable housing when it costs more. It has to cost less. It has to be easier to do. Right now, today, they stalled off a multi-million-dollar project in Tierra del Mar simply because they want another geohazard report. There's already been 4 or 5. There's been 2 or 3 years of engineering and studies and all this kind of thing. And this project is a campsite which would bring TLT funds directly to Tillamook County. So, you know, these are the kind of projects we need to push for. This is what we need to get going. We can't fund our sheriff. We can't fund anything until we figure out how to make more money. We have to get some economic development going on before we can do anything. I think that about wraps it up.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're just going to jump right into the questions. We have this first question. I've received a couple iterations of it. I'm going to try to see if I can hit all the points in one question. So essentially, one of the questions gears us towards the folks who are not incumbents. But I think that frankly, there's still things to learn and experiences to have. So I'm just going to give it to everybody. And we'll start with position 2 and starting with Paul. We will ask this question. What have you done to prepare yourself for the steep learning curve you would face if elected? And then I guess the part of that would be for the incumbent is what did you do to prepare for this when you first got in? And then how do you plan to hit the ground running or to keep running, depending on the situation? So we'll start with position number 2, and Paul, if you'd like to go first.
Okay, thanks. Well, I started this back at the fair. I remember seeing I had a booth there. I was the first candidate to file for county commissioner in this county. People that know me have known that I've hit the ground running, and I've been going to meetings, and I've been having meetings with department heads and lots of coffee and lots of lunches. I've been talking to a lot of people, residents, friends. I mean, I can't, if you follow me on Facebook, you know that I'm doing a lot of things. So it's not fake. I enjoy going and talking to people. I enjoy learning. I learn something every time I talk to somebody in the public. I feel like that's one of my strengths. So as far as hitting the ground running, one, I've had a varied career. I mean, I'm a pretty smart guy, but one of the things I've learned in all the jobs, I didn't know how to be a detective until I became a detective. There's a learning curve. I didn't know how to be a newspaper reporter or a television producer, or any of the jobs that I've done, truck driver, delivering produce in Tillamook County. I didn't know what anything was until I was there. So I've already been doing it, and I'm prepared to continue doing the work. Sorry, I was a little bit.
That's okay. I will just say, a minute goes by fast. I'm also a little nervous, and so audience one respect that. It gets a little scary having, I counted 70 people staring at you. And so just take a breath. We can, if you'd like to just take a second to center. She'll hit the button when you start talking, so it's all right. And so now we'll move to Darcy to finish that off for position number 2.
Well, I guess I started by going to the budget committee meeting to find out where all the money is. And being a commissioner, that's the most important thing there is to follow the money. You have to You have to be able to, you just have to know where it is. You have to keep chasing it around. That's 90% of what we did on the school board. It was usually all related to money. And you have to be able to know when to not take grants that come with strings that you have to pay for later. You have to be able to know when to, when to push to create a project. And I think I know how to do most of those things. I've been doing it for a lot of years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if you could pass the mic down to Bruce, you can start off with this question.
I was the last person to file, I think, in this group. It was in March, or pretty close to the deadline. And from that point, it's been an amazing couple of months because there's so much going on in this county and people really do want to talk. And I do like to listen. I don't have all the answers. I think I do at times, but I really don't. And I like to listen to people. I visited, Manzanita. You go up and talk to those folks up there. They're concerned about the county's focus on Pacific City. Pacific City, they've got other concerns. I mean, we're really a divergent county. And I think it's really important to listen. I have listened to hours and hours and hours of tapes of the commission. And it's pretty amazing what's going on here. And I started out in one direction, but now I'm moving, frankly, in another direction, and meaning that it's in another direction. I'm learning. Fiscal constraints, this deficit budget that's been proposed, $4 million, is just got to stop.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you. So I think that I've been preparing, actually, I'd say my whole career. And I say that because the county is the largest nonprofit that you have. The county is the largest nonprofit in Tillamook County. County government is nonprofit. So many of the things that we talk about, fund balance accounting, et cetera, that is nonprofit. Serving a community, working in collaboration partnerships, that is nonprofit. So in that way, I'd say that by preparing my whole career. I also work very closely with a number of county departments. In my last job as the executive director of care, I work closely with the health department on a regular basis as we did our community service work, serving those folks. The other thing I did when I decided I wanted to run for county commissioners, I joined the budget committee. And I was on the budget committee for 2 years prior to becoming a county commissioner, which gave me the chance to begin to dig and understand. So just to quickly address deficit budget, since we keep hearing that word, I would remind people the county is on a boom and bust cycle of timber. And when we have a boom year, we put it into savings, and when we have a bust year, we pull it out. And that's what he's calling a deficit budget. So just to be clear, that isn't quite what it sounds. Thank you.
This is a yes or no question. Nobody ever says yes or no, just to be clear. I try every time. So this question is, we'll start with position number 1, and we'll start with Commissioner Scar. Have you, or would you, support wind turbines off of the Tillamook coast?
That is an interesting question. Wind turbines, for those of you that know, are being put on the south coast by the federal government. So at this point in time, I would say no with the technology that is currently being proposed because of the dangers that it puts for our fisheries, and the fact that they don't even know if it's going to work. This is not the time for us to be the testing ground and to put those things at risk. So at this time, I would say no.
I spent 30 plus years in the electric utility industry working on resource issues. And I'm familiar with wind turbines, familiar with all kinds of generation. I would definitely not support wind turbines, and it's not going to happen here unless there's a massive subsidy that's being placed on it. And it's not going to happen here because of the cost of electricity from it's too high. Putting in the infrastructure, it's about $1 million a mile for underwater cable. And the hazards to our environment are just too significant. And that's one of the most amazing things we have here. And that's what people come here, is our environment, our beautiful environment. And so just no, I would not support it.
Based on all the research I've done, I would also say no, and also for the same reasons they all stated. Keep it short.
Well, pretty much it's a direct no. The biggest reason for that is wind turbines as a whole are not efficient. It takes about 16 years to pay off the cost of building a wind turbine, and their lifespan is only 12 years. And they're all funded by us, now they're by that pocket, and I'm just against it totally.
Thank you. Our next question, Darcy, if you want to keep the mic, we'll just start with you. A second amendment sanctuary ordinance was put before Tillamook County voters in 2022. It proposed fining any county employee for helping in the enforcement of state and federal gun laws. Did you support or oppose this ordinance, and please explain?
Well, personally, I would support it, but I'm not too sure that I would want to spend any money, any of the county's money dealing with it, because it's probably costly to, what do you call it, litigated somewhere in the end. But I agree with it personally. I would support it, but I think as far as the county goes, I don't think we really can, because it would be litigated and we'd be stuck with the bill.
I appreciate the question as asked as well. I would say that amendment, with my work as a sheriff's office PIO, we went over that very carefully. It had a lot of unintended consequences. So the answer is no, I did not support that as written. I think it would be very expensive. A lot of these measures that get written, the unintended consequences are the cost of implementation. We're dealing with that currently with some state legislation. So I would say no, I absolutely did not support it as written.
I wouldn't support it.
I don't support it, I wouldn't support it. I think it's important to tease out, as both Darcy and Paul did, some of the why behind it. And that really, as we looked at what that was going to cause county government to have to do, was really an impossible task. And as your county commissioners, our role is to make sure the county government runs efficiently and effectively. And for us to sign up for something that we know our government can't do is not a choice that we should make. And to Darcy's point about it being litigated, Yamhill County did do a second amendment sanctuary ordinance, and they then had to fight that with the AG's office of the state of Oregon. And again, our job is efficient, effective use of your dollars, and that is not an efficient and effective use of your dollars. So whether folks are gun owners and want to make sure that exists or not, the county's role is the important part that we have to think about as commissioners as these decisions come in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things I really enjoy most about these forums is the variety of questions that we get. So we're going to jump right into another one. The way it sounds, it may feel like you had a decision-making opportunity for some of you. And what it really is what would you have done? So whether you were in office, what would you have done different? And whether you were not in office yet, looking in, what would you do differently now? So let me just read the question, it'll make sense. But I'm just trying to confuse you more so that it takes longer to answer it. And we'll start with you, Commissioner Scar, since you're governor. What would you have done differently to mitigate the lives lost in Tillamook County during the pandemic? And what do you propose to do to be more prepared for the next pandemic?
That's an interesting one. So I stepped into this job when the pandemic was underway. So that's the first thing for me. So it was an interesting time to join this. I think that the county took a lot of very important steps, but the majority of what was done was led by the state. And I would suggest that that was the right approach. The state had an epidemiologist on staff who could understand and study the impacts of the disease and lead us in that solution basis. We did not have that kind of capacity or knowledge to make those decisions. I would suggest that we would continue to follow the expert advice of the people who know how to best keep us safe. I would suggest we have built some good structures at the county to respond to a pandemic that include partnerships with EBC and B that allowed us additional medical staff. I will continue to keep those going and look at, it's hard, any pandemic will be different, but continue to stay strong in our partnerships to look towards how we would respond and having the capacity to do so.
the tragedy of the pandemic, of course, is how we handle our children. How they stop going to school. I mean, I think we've really messed up a big generation. It's great Monday morning quarterback this question now. What did the county do? What did the county government do? First thing they did was knee jerk when this thing first started in March. And we had a big influx of people here. They said, we got to get rid of these tourists. We have to shut down these businesses, shut down the restaurants. And the county itself shut down all the lodging. They put blockades to block the access to the water. It was just a silly knee-jerk reaction, and it really put a lot of us at risk that were trying to make a living.
Nothing to speculate on what I would have done because I wasn't in the position at that time. I would hope that hindsight's 20/20. I think we can all agree there's a lot of mistakes made. There was a lot of precaution taken. I would hope that we have learned from the businesses we've lost, the lives that we've lost. I think if we were to get prepared for the next pandemic, which is scary to think about, I hope that we as a community can look back on what we now know, what we were told. And I think we should move forward, being very careful about how we did it last time and what we've learned since then. So I just think learn more past mistakes and successes.
Well, I don't know. This is quite a question. Well, I saw some of the craziest things. There was totally amazing. I think common sense went totally out the window. And you know, it's really something that I really don't have any real experience with, and I don't know. We would just have to follow our common sense and go with the best possible scenario. I just, you know, that's something that's hopefully it's a once in a lifetime thing, and we'll never see it again. I still remember driving all the way from Civic City to the top of Cascade Head and never met a car. That was like, you know, some kind of a doomsday scenario, seemed like. But and then we had people from Washington here, and they were staying on the beach, and everything was okay for them. The short-term rentals seemed to be totally open while all the hotels were shut down.
Darcy.
I never did figure out how that worked. But anyway.
Thank you, Darcy. Okay, so now we're going to move into a site-specific question. For those running for commissioner, this is right from the writer's perspective, as a lifetime resident of South Tillamook counties, one of their enjoyments over the last 4 years has been being a member of the Oregon Solve Adopt a Beach program. Up until recently, they've been able to drive from Pacific City Turnaround to the mouth of the Nestucca River collecting trash. It's a 3-mile stretch that they otherwise could not do physically because of age and health. This person has collected and photographed and documented 599 pounds of trash since 2020. That alone is probably a question. What is your position on keeping this 3-mile stretch of beach open so the ones of us who physically cannot walk this 3 miles can still enjoy it and participate in solve cleanup by vehicle? And so we'll start with Darcy. Is that okay?
Okay. Well, I'm not real sure exactly what this is supposed to mean, but yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go clean up trash on the beach, you need to be able to access it and that kind of thing. I actually remember doing riprap on the beach, and the state parks guy always asked me to clean up anything that was there when I had a dump truck and excavator on the beach. And yeah, I'm sure I would have increased that tonnage by a lot. But yeah.
Can I ask a qualified
Yes.
question? Can you just give me the location again so I'm sure which one you
South Pacific between the turnaround and the Nestucca River.
Okay, So as a Marine Patrol, my first job at the Sheriff's Office was a Marine Patrol deputy stationed at Cape Kiwanis, so this was my patrol area. I would absolutely leave it open for that. In fact, I would say that during salt cleanup, we should be maybe expanding that and maybe have sheriff's pickup trucks or state parks be available to load trash in there and drive people out there. I think that I'm a big supporter of the Tierra Del Mar. If you see a picture of my Facebook page, my van is on the beach at Tierra Del Mar. That was Oregon's beach bill. That's part of the beach bill. Oregon beaches are considered a public highway. So I think those are an important part of our culture and history here, as well as the dory boats being able to watch and all that. I would support it.
On the beaches, in Netarts, Happy Camp to Oceanside, we have a fire department go through there and they actually pick up all the garbage from Salt. And it's interesting, by the way, we thought we just completed a beach cleanup weekend and there was people down there, of course, on our beaches right there. That's, by the way, it's my front yard right there because I live down in Happy Camp. So it's nice to see people out there and people collect garbage year round. And I like that. It's really makes me feel good. As far as access down, I'm not sure it's really necessary, but if it helps facilitate someone that has a handicap, I'm all in favor of that. We host Davis Chair down at our beach at Happy Camp. And so people with mobility issues are able to go out on an electric wheelchair. And it is really enlightening to see people and have them visit with people as they're out there on a wheelchair.
Thank you. I would support keeping that section open for vehicle access for the salt cleanup for sure. I think having our beaches have the opportunity, so where you have some where there are no vehicles, which gives you an opportunity to enjoy the beach in a certain way, and having some where vehicles are allowed for folks who are unable to access the beach otherwise is a really important function. So I think that having both options is available and keeping it open for this makes sense to me. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is, how important is it to you to help with the county's infrastructure shortcomings? And they list out power, roads, bridges, emergency services, and housing that is not low income. We'll start with you, Commissioner.
Read it again.
There's a lot of pieces in there.
Yep. How important is it to you to help with the county's infrastructure shortcomings? Power, roads, bridges, emergency services, and housing that is not low income.
That's a great list of all things that are very important. So I would suggest that I would be in support of all of those. And I would just speak very briefly to the fact that the Housing Commission at the county is supporting housing that is affordable and also middle income housing. That in our last round of grants that we recently gave away, we had 6 that we awarded, and I believe 5 of those 6 were workforce housing. So there is a narrative that's being peddled in the community that we only support affordable housing, and I'm really happy to dispel that myth as we sit here today. We are delighted to have workforce housing being applied for through our grant programs, and we're delighted to be able to support that in being built. We need all kinds of housing in Tillamook County, and middle income is a key piece of that. So I would suggest that we need all of the infrastructure, all of what's been mentioned, and hopefully that clarifies a bit on some of the housing in the county.
I guess I would agree in terms of the priority on these issues. I would take one exception that I'm not really, I don't think the county's role ought to be in providing grants to businesses to subsidize their businesses for affordable housing. Now, these are low-income housing. This is not workforce housing because there's an income test in this. So I don't know. I think these are all important issues, and I continue supporting those.
The question was, will we continue funding? Can you read the question again?
Yeah. How important is it to you to help with the county's infrastructure shortcomings?
Okay,
sure. Funding support.
Sure. I think well, I've had lunch with Chris Lady, who's back there, who heads up Public Works, and I know he is doing a fantastic job of looking at. Well, obviously, we already use visitor money for our roads in this county, and I think there's a lot of solutions there. I support their efforts. I support our Housing Commission, I think they're doing a fantastic job with exploring some things. So I think the biggest thing is I absolutely support these. I'm not sure about the power because that's a PUD deal. But I think bridges and roads and culverts especially, I know that Chris is focused on that and I would get behind him 100% and try to support that.
I wasn't aware we had an infrastructure problem with power. I thought PUD was pretty good. Everything else, yeah, we definitely have, we have some issues that we have to push on. Affordable housing to me is the biggest issue because there's no place for our children or grandchildren to live. And we need to figure out how to make that happen. As far as the roads, you know, yes, we definitely have to improve our roads. And we have to figure out a lot more stable source of funding for our road department. Our road department is just kind of hanging out there on a whim. And that just doesn't work. They need to be, you know, need to be pretty steadily funded.
Okay, next question is, another yes or no. Since a commissioner position is an elected position and nonpartisan, and you're supposed to represent the community that voted you in, are you willing to put your own opinion aside if it's not what your community constituents are asking of you? We'll start with you, Darcy.
Well, I think I got the gist of that. If I take the position, it's going to be the best for Tillamook County. My personal opinion really doesn't matter when it's really the county that is the focus of, you know, where you need to focus your attention. You know, it's, yeah, you can't let your personal opinion override the goodness of the county.
Yes.
Well, yes. Read the question one more time, just make sure I get it right.
Since a commissioner position is nonpartisan and an elected position, and supposed to represent the community that voted you in, are you willing to put your own opinion aside if it's not what your community constituents are asking of you?
I think you're electing people based on kind of our life experience. And do we have the ability to make a decision? Do we have any principles that we stick to? And I think we all do. We all have principles. You have to decide which ones are the ones that are consistent with yours. Mine, of course, is again, is strong on the financial side, being conservative on spending, having an expense or budget that meets our ability to pay for it, public safety, and public safety. I think that anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great question, and it's one that as commissioners we work with a lot because we have a lot of constituencies, and figuring out what it is that our constituency really wants is a challenging piece. I would absolutely set aside my personal opinion. If we had a constituent, we were able to public hearings, we were able to really hear what was important to people, then I think we need to follow what they would look for us to do. I do think that to some degree, Bruce is right that often we are not going to find that our constituencies all agree on a pathway forward, and that then we are, as elected officials, in the position of trying to find that elusive common good, someplace where we know, to go back actually to Darcy's comments, is best for the county. It is the best path forward for the most people, but we can't always achieve what everyone in our constituency is seeking. So we say, if you get everybody a little bit mad at you, you've probably threaded the needle as best you can. Thanks.
So we've heard a lot about budgets on this panel, and all those questions was directed towards a panel, one particular person I think is actually appropriate for the entire panel. What besides grants would you consider for alternate funding? We'll start with you, Commissioner Stark.
Sure, this is a challenging question because what the state allows the county to do for funding is exceptionally limited. So I will tell you that right now we are looking at the transient lodging tax and the potential to increase that because we have control over that. There are very few other sources that we have control over. Fees we can charge, but they have to be backed up by the actual expenses behind the fee that you're doing. So for our planning department, for example, you have to prove that's the hours it takes to do the work. So we are looking at the transient lodging tax. We can do bonds and levies. We are currently looking at a radio bond so that we can update the emergency radio system. So I think when I look at it, there are some very specific things that we can do as a county, and I would entertain any and all of the things that are allowable for us, but recognizing that as a government, we do not function like a private business. We cannot just charge for our services and then use that revenue anywhere we want. It is tied specifically to the work that we're doing to raise those funds. Thank you.
I guess I'm not at the point where I could say that we need to increase our revenues, which is taxes, fees, whatever. I would like to, in essence, look at the budget and look at the expenses that we have and try to streamline those budgets to meet the expense levels that we have. So often we just kind of revert and look towards more revenue enhancements. Again, I'm not there. I'm willing to learn though, but I'm not there right now.
One thing I would do is move parks back into general fund and put more investment into our parks. And the reason for that is the visitor industry isn't going to stop. It's one of our fastest growing industry. And I want to grab some more of their money. So I would definitely pull them back in the general fund and have them create as much money as we can. Also, a friend of mine, and I don't always agree with him, said that we're not in the county's not in the real estate business, we're in the taxing business. And I don't mean increasing taxes, I mean increasing housing so we get more taxable and more taxpayers. And that's how we can raise revenue as well, by encouraging economic growth, by encouraging businesses to come down here and develop, maybe part of Highway 6, get Bymart in there or something like that. We can get the assessor's office to make some more money that way. Not on our backs again.
Yeah, we need to increase our revenue, all right, and like you said, we need to promote more business. We need to actually be able to get a permit from our Department of Community Development so that we can promote some of the business. And you know, this has made this county pretty stagnant for a long time. And now we're kind of paying the price. This has been going on for years. We need to open up and get more building going on so that there's more revenue.
We're down to our two last questions, although we do have some additional, and I would encourage you, if your question didn't get asked, to make sure that you reach out to the, make sure that you reach out.
That doesn't sound good.
I have a little redirect here. Moderators choice here. Maybe we'll squeeze in. So where I was going with this is, how do you know what your constituents need? And I think Darcy has the mic, so if you'd like to start.
Well, I assume they usually tell me. Yeah, I don't know. You have to listen. You have to be open and available. And you know, when the last time I needed something from the county, I remember having to wait 4 weeks before anyone would even talk to me. And that's just not going to cut it with me.
You have to get out and actually be with people. You can't do it from the office. You can't do it during a meeting or all these commission and committee meetings and board meetings. Mark Labhart endorsed me, and part of his direction to me was go down to the coffee clutches, go walk into those McDonald's and the Fern and talk to those people and listen to them. And they're going to be mad at you and they do these things. But even as a police officer, I got out in the car quite a bit. I would get out and go to businesses and visit with people And I think that's just the way I am. I'm gonna be getting out there and listening. And as a registered unaffiliated voter, I don't have any ideology that I have to follow. So I'm gonna listen to everybody equally and figure out the best solution is for all of us.
One thing that, when I go out and talk to people, I hear more and more, we always hear about the homeless issue and the concern for what that's doing to Tillamook City itself, and even broader than that. So that's top of mind right now. Workforce housing is another issue. One of the things that I think we could do as a commission, and I would move towards this, is go to evening meetings. You know, it's great for the directors and the staff of the county to be able to meet you at during their work hours. But, you know, when I was on the planning commission for 10 years, we met in the evenings. Sometimes we would meet, and I see Terry Jones here too. We could meet till after midnight in some cases. But again, it was a public forum that we were able to hear the public, and we have to be conducive for allowing the people to be active and participate with us.
Thank you. I think I really share Paul's thought, which is you have to get out and you have to talk to people. You have to make yourself available. You have to be in spaces where people are having conversations. What's been interesting about the post-COVID world is when we invite people to come to us, they really do. It's just, we've sort of lost that sense of going to meetings. So it's really important as commissioners that we get out to where people are already meeting and that we're able to hear what's on their mind. So what I would suggest is in getting out there and hearing what people have on their minds, the three most critical things that I hear at the top of mind for everybody is lack of housing. Everyone, it doesn't matter who you ask, they will tell you the lack of housing is a huge issue in Tillamook County. The other one I hear is lack of workforce. That one is huge. We are struggling across our businesses everywhere to have workforce. And then the third piece that we're hearing about a lot is infrastructure. We don't have our water and sewer not working the way they should in many of our cities and communities. So we get out there and listen, and there are definitely some critical issues that I really need to like.
Thank you. And then we received a couple iterations of this question, so I'm going to try to pull them together. How will the recent Department of Forestry decision impact timber revenue? And what can the county commission do to get either timber revenue restored or identify other sources to fill that gap? Big question, but Commissioner.
Yeah, big question for 1 minute. So the Habitat Conservation Plan that is moving forward, what we have been told by the Department of Forestry, we invited them to a commissioner meeting and had a pretty in-depth conversation, is that we will expect a flattening of the timber revenue. So in our history, we've had really good years and really bad years, anything from $8 million in our budget to $2 million in our budget. And they told us to expect 4.5 million in our budget ongoingly. So the Habitat Conservation Plan is a significant impact to the county budget. It also impacts our schools and our special districts. So I'm talking about county budget because I feel like that was the question at hand, but it impacts our community even greater. I don't think we can increase that. I expect that this is a federal government driven process and we're not going to be able to increase it. So to our comments earlier about the increasing of revenue, that's where we need to go. So I think we've talked about a lot of those sources. I won't reiterate everything because I'm out of time.
I mean, that's good news if the Habitat Conservation Plan, it stabilizes the forest revenue to the county. That's not what I'm hearing though. I'm hearing it's going to be a reduction. I think Doug Olson had mentioned possibly a $2 million impact in revenue to the county. So it's going to be significant. Now, we are stagnant in terms of from the economy. Tourism, it actually is doing well, but we're trying to do things to dissuade tourism. But I really believe that we need to really pursue aggressively economic development. We need to do, the Port of Tillamook Bay is a great example. It's got land there. We need to get some business here. And if you think about it, we have 3 million people within 2 driving hours of our county. There ought to be some opportunities there for us.
The reality is, we'll see what, it's really hard to tell what the HCP is going to do, but I guarantee it's going to reduce revenue. But the big elephant in the room here is it's been reducing for the last 15 years. $4.5 million in 2007 and 9. It's not the same as $4.5 million here. So there was never a steady, and we should have had some solutions for diversifying our revenue years ago, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, because the numbers, it's a private industry and it's going to fluctuate. It's going to be boom and bust, but it hasn't been consistent. It's been continually going down. We need to fight for it. And we need to continue that fight. And I think we already spoke about the alternative revenue. So again, to her point, I don't think I'm going to repeat all that because I'm out of time.
Well, it's, I think it's definitely a losing battle. We're just being outvoted by the population center. And that's just the way it is. And we're just gonna have to find new sources of revenue. I think we need to fight it all we can. That's all we can do. But in reality, we're just gonna get overran. And I don't know, how much money the county can spend fighting it. You can't afford to fight a losing battle forever. And I kind of expect them to come after the rest of it. I think within 5 years, there's going to be a different conservation plan and they're going to get it all. So reality is we need to move on.
So we're going to end before we move into your closing remarks on a question I have never asked at a forum. With so much negativity in the political world, name one positive thing about your challenger. You don't have to like them. One positive. So we'll start with you, Darcy. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, Dave here seems to care. He works every day, I assume. Seems to be a good deputy, and I don't know. Yeah, have a nice haircut.
Besides for getting my name wrong every time. I think Darcy, what I like about Darcy is that he truly cares. I mean, this is not fun running. Putting your name in this, doing this is torturous. It is a roller coaster ride. That's why a lot of people don't do it. So I commend all of us and the ones in the audience that are doing this. And I commend Darcy for doing that. It's just not fun.
Aaron? You are passionate. A little misguided, maybe. Passionate about the homeless, and I admire that.
I believe that every single one of us up here, Bruce included, is very passionate about our community. I think that every one of us loves Tillamook County. I think Bruce has expressed that through other ways that he's participated in our county, and I appreciate the piece of the work, the fact that you all have David's chair and that you have done that on your own. I believe that you all built the shed, you do the maintenance, you do that because it's the right thing for our community, and that in particular is something that I really respect about you.
Sweet.
Okay, so now you have 1 minute to tell us why we should vote for you. And Commissioner Scarr, if you'd like to go first.
I will, and I may not take the whole minute. So, over the past 4 years, we've navigated a lot as a county, and looking ahead, we still have big systemic challenges that are like creating enough housing, addressing addiction, creating more high wage jobs. Successful leadership on these issues requires an understanding both of what is driving them and what tools we have at the county level to address them. Experience matters, which is why I'm running for re-election and why I'm the right choice for this race.
A lot of times we focus on kind of the negative, and I certainly do, and I probably will for the remainder of this election and some certain parts to kind of distinguish Aaron and myself, the differences that we have. I want to see Tillamook County have a really good future. I want to see our kids graduate from here and stay here and or go to college and come back. But we need to have some better opportunities for them. We need to be as aggressive as we are with housing the homeless. to bringing in new businesses, new economic development here. I'm all for a balanced budget. I'm not in favor of taxes at this point, and I think we have to live within our means. We have to decide, county government side, what is in our purview and what is not. If it's in a city of Tillamook, that's their rule. If it's a county rule, we do it. Then we have to decide which of those we can afford, and we need to provide the resources for those.
I think I'm the only union represented county employee that ever tried to run for county commissioner. I think that brings a different perspective. I'm not a stranger to the county and how it operates. I've got a lot of relationships. I've spent the last couple of years talking to people way smarter than me, asking for solutions, asking for ideas. I think I can hit the ground running. I've already got these relationships. I've on first name basis, they're in my cell phone. I'm passionate about the county. I love living here. I retired from the sheriff's office and I stayed and it will be a small business. I didn't move when I could have. This is my home. It's going to be my forever home. And I'm committed to leaving it better than I found it.
I've been a licensed general contractor in Tillamook County for 32 years. And I've always done development. We always worked on subdivisions, house sites, that kind of thing. And I got my calculator out and added it up, and I have personally created at least $150 million in taxable property in Tillamook County. And if you figure out the tax rate, that brings in $1,020,000 a year in taxes directly to the county, not counting the school district. So, yeah, I do know how to do development. I do know how to make some economic development, and I can definitely have created some income for the county.
Thank you. So one more time, we have for position number 1, county commissioners, we have Jess Speak, Commissioner Scar, and Bruce Loveland. And for position 2, we have Paul Fournier and Darcy Jones. And let's give them a round of applause. You already opened. Now I'll ask for our assessor's race to come to the front.
So county assessor. Okay.
Okay, so
Always not getting to them.
moving into the assessor's race, there's a tendency to want to chat and maybe reach out to some of the candidates who just talked. I strongly encourage that, but if you could take it out in the hall, that would be wonderful. So we're going to move into the next race, which is for our assessor. So my guess is some of us are going to get a little educated in what an assessor does. But this is an important position for local government, and we have 2 fine candidates up here who have decided to take the plunge and see if they can lead us in that department. So we're going to start with 2.5 minutes. And because there's just 2 of you, we'll just go back and forth. So one will do one question, another do next. And so we'll have your opening remarks, and we'll start with Cassandra.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna stand. Can everyone hear me okay? Is that better?
Maybe it's on, it's on the bottom. Just push on the bottom. The light comes on.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Cassandra Larson. I am currently the Chief Deputy Assessor and Tax Collector in Tillamook County. This year, I'm asking for your vote to be the next county assessor. In Tillamook County, the county assessor is also appointed the tax collector. This key position in our community is responsible for overseeing Tillamook County property tax system, as well as overseeing the staff underneath them. So on a personal note, I would like to thank the AAUW for hosting this forum, and I would like to thank my family and friends for coming here today in support. I was born and raised in Tillamook County. I'm proud to say I am a local 4th generation resident. My parents are Richard and Deborah Kuhn, and I'm married to Colby Larson for over 20 years now. And my children are Tyler right there, he's 15, and Trevin is 12. I got that wrong on the radio, so Trevin wanted me to correct that. So my platform is rooted in my extensive experience, my commitment to the community, and my involvement in the Oregon Association of County Tax Collectors. The assessor's office is broken into 4 sections. We have appraisal, GIS cartography, tax collection, and records management. I'm the only candidate that has the hands-on experience in both appraisal and tax collection, as well as staff management. This key position in the assessor's office not only requires technical expertise, but it also requires a loyalty to the community. My history is that I came back, I started at the assessor's office in 2002 when I returned home from college after obtaining my bachelor's of science in psychology from the University of Oregon. I soon became a state of Oregon registered appraiser with the county. I spent 15 years in appraisal, specializing in residential appraisal. I was promoted 3 times before obtaining the role of sales data analyst and lead residential appraiser. In 2017, I accepted my current position as Chief Deputy Assessor and Tax Collector. In this role, I oversee the mailing and billing of our over 29,000 taxable properties in Tillamook County. And last year that accumulated to $73.4 million in taxes. That's so distracting. On top of my duties managing the staff collection department, I also oversee ownership records. And I'm also vice chair of the Oregon Association of County Tax Collectors. Thank you. I didn't mean that.
No, makes your brain stop.
Yeah.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for attending this candidate forum. I want to thank the AAUW for allowing the candidates to present themselves here today. I am Carrie Fleischer. I'm a candidate for Tillamook County Assessor. I was raised in New Haven, Oregon, where I attended the Tillamook County School District from preschool to high school, where I graduated as valedictorian of my class. After that, I went to Southern Oregon University, where I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration, a minor in chemistry, and a certificate of applied finance and economics and financial analysis. With my now husband, him and I moved to Southern California and to dry out a little bit, and found the quality of life there lacking. So then we decided to move back to Tillamook County. And at that time, I was hired as a property appraiser trainee. In my 20 years experience, I have appraised all types of property, from residential, farm and forest properties, and the position I hold now as a commercial industrial appraiser. Excuse me. During the pandemic, I went back to school. I got a master's of business administration degree with a focus in data analytics while working full-time, by the way. I also, during that process, I graduated the top 9% of students nationally in the MBA program. I previously ran for the assessor's office 12 years ago. I did this while I didn't succeed at this election. It has not tarnished my desire and my ability to do my best. I believe the tool has given me a solid foundation to build as your next assessor in Tillamook County. I have been also involved very heavily in the community. I was on the Bay City Council for 7 years, as well as the president for 4. Currently, I'm on the board of the Garibaldi Budget Committee, the Tillamook County School Board, and was one of the founding members of the Tillamook County Housing Commission, and was appointed to that board in 2018. I'm currently the vice chair. In my spare time, I do enjoy spending time with my family, our 2 St. Bernards, and attending community functions like this. With these qualities and the desire to be your next Tillamook County assessor, I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to jump into questions. We have a number. So your apartment's ability to earn revenue for the county is guided by state policy. Well, first you'll tell us if that's true. As an elected official with a public voice, what state policy changes will you advocate for to enable you to best serve Tillamook County? We'll start with you, Carrie.
All right, as far as we do follow Oregon state statutes. And currently, there is a push at the state legislature to modify, grant tax exemptions for seniors that are over 65. With that, however, there was no income limits or the number of houses to be owned by those seniors that are over 65. I do find that there is a program in Colorado where it's like a work back program where seniors can work off their property. That is something that I would bring to the county commissioners, as well as the Oregon Association of Assessors, as well as our state reps, to see if maybe a program like that could work here. Thank you.
I really want to stay in.
That's fine.
Okay, this is a great question because the assessor cannot advocate. I am, as I said, I am currently vice chair on the Oregon Association of County Tax Collectors. And with the assessors as well, I attend weekly meetings when legislation is occurring. We can lend our voice as to whether or not we can administer a policy or not. But the assessor is very clear. You need to stay in your lane, so to speak, nor do you want the assessor going out and advocating for things. Our role and responsibility is to gather the property inventory, value it, calculate the taxable value, and then send out the tax bills and collect those taxes. Thank you.
All right. Next, you're going to hear some repeats because folks wanted to hear the response to these questions from all candidates. And so this is regarding how you're getting yourself prepared. So what have you done to prepare yourself for the steep learning curve you would face if elected? And how do you plan to hit the ground running? We'll start with you, Cassandra.
So how am I getting myself prepared? Well, I can say I've been getting myself prepared since 2002 when I joined the assessor's office. A couple of years into my career, the assessor at the time, Tim Lutz, sat me down and he said, I think you have what it takes to be the assessor. So it was instrumental in guiding my career through that time. When I became the chief deputy assessor and tax collector in 2017, I took that position in order to broaden my knowledge of the tax collection department, as well as gain staff management in order for this eventual run. I've been working directly under the assessor for the last almost 7 years now, and that is how I've been preparing myself. During the campaign, I've been going out, I've been meeting with people, I've been meeting with the public, just to kind of educate people on what the assessor does, because again, the assessor can't go out and advocate and say that they're going to fix the TLT funds or anything that matters. Thank you.
Well, I too have been preparing for a long time. When I ran for this position in 2012, I stood up and I worked hand in hand with the current assessor during that 12 years. We work very closely together. I've always focused on efficiency. I've developed programs in each role I've had in the assessor's office, from calculating tax rates for a disqualification for farm and forest properties to county sale tax 1099 forms that the county commissioners send out with land sales. So I've definitely worked very closely with the assessor's office and the assessor in preparation for this position.
Thank you. How does affordable housing, how does affordable housing rate in paying property tax? Is it deferred? And at what rate do they pay?
All right, great question. It's not on a discounted rate. Depends on ownership. If it's owned by a housing authority, it is 100% tax exempt. If it is a low-income housing project that is not funded or owned by the housing authority, they can apply for a special assessment program. In that special assessment program, their property taxes on their contracted rates. And if it's a market-based housing program, they pay taxes on their full amount, as determined by the real market value of that property. And then we calculate the tax from there.
So, okay, let me think here. If a property is owned by a non-exempt entity, there is no tax. So if you have an ownership that such as the government or the city, they are non-assessable and they don't pay tax. If a home is put on the roll, whether it was, middle income, low income, whatever, by statute, we are supposed to put the real market value of that property on the roll. That is a very hard statute that we have to follow. So that real market value is going to come from surrounding sales. What would that property sell for on an open market? The assessed value is calculated off of that real market value, and you're taxed at a rate per 1,000 of assessed value. That rate is the same as any other rate in your area. There is no discount for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have, we'll start with you, Cassandra. What are the challenges associated with this position?
Getting the work done. So we have 9 appraisers in our office, and we are tasked with going out and getting all of the new construction, any new permits that were taken out that year. So I believe last year it's a little over 3,600 permits that we have to go out and look at and value. The challenge would be is that we really need to get on an improvement reappraisal cycle. There are some properties that we might not have seen in the last 20 years. So finding time for that task and then finding hopefully additional staff in order to do that would be wonderful.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
What are the challenges associated with this position?
Sure. We've had a lot of transition over the last 5 years. I think we've lost, I forget, about a 30% loss turnover in our department. So we've had new trainees, which has shifted the workload. Currently, I am responsible for 25% of the workload in regards to the permits, and put about 30% of the property taxes on the tax roll for the areas I'm responsible for, including Pacific City, Tierra del Mar, commercial utilities, and other property types. So now that we have these trainees that are now hired and they're now fielding, we can now be more efficient with our time and produce, I guess, even out the workload between those appraisers and get people trained up. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So with that, what are the top 3 things that you would do if elected? So I don't think that's confined to the day what are your top 3 things you're going to do that day? Find out where the bathrooms are. What are the top 3 things that you will do if elected to this position?
Well, hopefully all of us know where the restaurants are. Top 3, first off, would be just engaging with the community. We have a lot of special programs. Tax exemptions is for one of them. And there's a lot of staff changeover in those nonprofit entities. So a challenge is a lot of them do not have a lot of funding. They have to file an application to receive such a tax exemption. And then they come in late, we have to charge them a late filing fee. So being able to provide additional information to those taxpayers would be great. In addition to that, business personal property was ordained property, or it was something brand new to me, even as an office manager prior to working for the assessor's office. This program is for all business owners have to file a return with our county. And by providing more information to our accountants as well as business owners, we can provide additional information and get more people complying.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do as assessor is I'm going to be hiring for my position. And Denise Vandekubring and Lori McKibben, Denise is our assessor and Lori McKibben is our chief appraiser. They're retiring this year, so hiring a brand new management team is going to be the first thing I'll be doing. The second thing I will be doing is meeting with our software vendors to find advances in technology to streamline our work. Currently, I'm working with vendors to implement e-statements in 2025. The third thing I will be doing is taking all of our information that we have on the website that's been building up for the past 20, 30 years and streamlining that to make it easier for the public to use.
Great, thank you. This next question is interesting. When I get my tax statement, it's a little confusing to know what each of the taxable elements are. Is there some way to provide more information on what each item is in our tax statement?
What is on your tax statement is set by the Oregon Department of Revenue. We have to have very specific items on there. So it's one piece of paper. We don't have much room to write anything else because there are so many things that we already have to have on there. But what we do have on there is our contact information. And you can call us and we pick up the phone every single time. Come into our office, there is someone there to speak to you. That is part of what we do. That's part of what I manage is public service. We are here to explain your assessed value, your real market value, and what is on your property to you at any time during business hours.
I essentially want to echo what Cassandra just said. The information on the tax statement is required and is statutory. We cannot modify or change it. And if we did, the explanations would get rather long. What we have done in the past is provide additional inserts and flyers, but that also costs money. And we do have a sample photo of the tax statement on our website with explanations on what it is. And again, we can always reach out and feel free to call us because we do, all of us answer the phone.
Okay. Can you explain the role that the assessor's office has in the budget process?
Sure. The main role in the budget process is for controlling our two pots of money, or our two budgets. We have the assessment and tax budgets. Between those two, we do manage the number of FTEs and material and services that we request from the budget committee. And that is super lean. Majority of our dollars that we ask for on an annual basis come from basically personnel. We don't replace things very often. We're very conscious of the tax dollars that we raise and how it's being spent within our budget. Thank you.
The assessor's responsibility for the county budget is to levy the tax. Now, we do not tax, we collect the tax. I want to make that very clear. We do not set the tax rate, although we calculate it on the assessed value. Last year, we brought in $73.4 million to the county budget. However, I believe only 13% of that goes into the general fund. Okay. The rest of the money, 50%, goes to education in schools, fire districts, library, bonds, levies, things like that. Our county office, our budget this year was $2.2 million. So we are in that general county budget. That is our role that the assessor office plays in contributing to the general fund.
So this question was also pointed to the county commissioner race, and our state reps will hear it as well. How do you know what your constituents need?
Well, generally they want less taxes. What constituents need is honestly what I need, and I think what everybody else in our community needs is we want accurate real market value, we want accurate taxable value, and we want to know that the job is being done right. as far as the relationship with the assessor's office. We want to be able to come into the assessor's office, have our questions answered, use the data available, and see what resources we have to help them in whatever they need.
Can you repeat it once more?
Yes. Sorry, I moved my head back. How do you know what your constituents need?
Okay, well, I think our constituents consist of the taxpayers as well as the taxing districts in which we receive their budgets and calculate the tax rates. We do hear from angry taxpayers that are frustrated. And one nice thing is we do have a great customer service that is able to explain, listen on a very compassionate basis and answer people's questions. We definitely, even out in the field as appraisers, we are out knocking on doors, asking questions, answering those taxpayers' questions at the door. So we definitely do our best to try to answer all of those questions. And if they have something that to note, we bring that back and ask those questions to our the assessor or the county commissioners if it's related to them, or we direct them to another department where they can get those answers.
Okay. So we're moving into our last question and then your time to wrap up. With so much negativity in the political world, name one positive thing about your challenger. And again, you don't have to like them, but you do have to acknowledge something positive about them and their views.
Well, I worked with Cassandra Larson for the last 20 years. My wedding. So she's a wonderful person, very compassionate, and we work well together. So I think that's about it. In short, yeah.
Yeah, Carrie and I started pretty much around the same time from the ground up. And I would like to say that Carrie is pleasant to work with. She laughs easy, and she also has a high value on education. And I think that that is really important, and I admire that about her.
Thank you. All right, well, we're gonna move into your final thoughts and why we should vote for you. And so since you have the mic, Cassandra, we'll start with you and with Carrie.
So my final thoughts are what makes a good assessor. To be a good assessor, you need to have hands-on experience in the role, which I do. I have hands-on experience as an appraiser, as a tax collector, as a county manager, and then working directly under the assessor for the last 7 years. You also need to have an understanding of the governing statutes, and you also need to have a collaborative management style, which is something I've grown into over the years. It is very important to be in the community and build community trust. I have been around in and of this community for the past 45 years. I would also like to say that I am endorsed by our prior county assessor, Tim Lutz. I am endorsed by the Lane County Assessor, Mary Schaefer, Lynn County Assessor, Andy Stevens, Joe Davidson, the Lincoln County Assessor, and also Cyrus Javity, our district representative. Thank you.
All right. Main points is I'm educated, experienced, and community focused. I will want to be able to listen to everybody, answer their questions, and as far as experience, using my master's degree in data analytics, I can increase efficiency within our office. I've done so since I started there, and making the job simpler. And also when we can be very focused on, especially with budget pressure, we can truly look at how we are operating in our processes internally. And I think I have the ability to do that. Thank you.
Well, let's give a hand for our campus. Thank you, guys. And thank you for the information. And now we're going to bring up our state representative race.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So this is our only partisan race that we're going to be talking about today, and this is for state representative. And so in this instance, we have two Republican candidates running. We have Representative Cyrus Jaffe and Glenn Gaither. And then on the Democrat side, we have Logan Lady. And so I just wanted to make that clear. This is a little bit different, depending on where you are politically. Your ballot may have one race or the other, and then we'll see the winners of those races at the November election. So that is the difference today. Everyone else has been partisan. So we are going to start with 2.5 minutes. I'm going to ask the audience, we're probably going to go a little bit over 5, because we've got some questions we want to make sure they get answered. And there's always the challenge of being the last group, and having time get compressed, and we want to avoid that if possible. So we will start with Logan, if you'd like to start with your 2.5 minutes to kick this off, and then we'll move down the line.
Thank you. Can you all hear me all right? Oh, I'm not sure we're on. Testing, 1, 2. On bottom, thank you.
Okay.
Testing, 1, 2. All right, perfect. Thank you all. Hello, thank you. My name is Logan Lacey, and thank you to AAUW and Lisa for moderating. Oregon's motto translates to "She flies with her own wings." I firmly believe that we are innovators, and that by listening to our own communities, we can solve many of the problems we face today. I'm Logan Lacey, and I'm working to build thriving communities. In the public service, I serve as chair of the Tillamook Urban Renewal Agency, and in the civil service, I've worked in the legislature and for the New Turks Water District. I've had the opportunity to invest in workforce housing and even local optometry services. But without state investment, our communities are limited in our ability to thrive. Through my service, I have seen that we need dedicated representation in Salem. Current representation skipped out on votes and sponsored extreme bills that would expand clear cuts next to our drinking watersheds and restrict abortion rights. These are all in the public record. These are not the actions of a serious legislature claiming to truly represent our home or our values. And I'm energized to run again to protect our fundamental rights, our water sources, and to provide dedicated, consistent leadership. I can promise you that I will show up every day asking, how do we build bridges among legislators and community leaders? And what can I do to ensure that every resident can continue to call our coast home? I'm running for this position again because I care, because this is my home, and I believe that this district needs full-time representation. I grew up here on the coast. I went to Tillamook Bay Community College. This is my alma mater, and everyone from my great aunt to my parents continue to live here. I've personally spoken to thousands of neighbors, and by far the #1 topic on everyone's mind is housing. It furthers issues like homelessness and is vital to ensuring we have the firefighters, teachers, nurses, police, and caregivers we need to care for our communities. It's also challenging. How do we build more while preserving our natural beauty? Add multifamily while preserving property values. We can work together as a community to improve our lot for the next generation. I'm Logan Lacey. I'm running for state representative, and I look forward to earning your vote. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Glenn Gaither. I'm running for the State House seat against Dr. Javity. So we're at a crossroads here in Oregon. Our industries are under attack, our jobs are under attack, and most of the people out there have issues with the public education system. My background was mostly federal, state, and public service. I went to high school in Napa, Oregon. When I left at Napa in 1980, I went straight into the Marine Corps. I did a 4-year tour in the Marine Corps, got out for a bit, got a bit bored, looked around for another mission, and went into the Army. Served another 4 years. Some people will ask me which branch I think was better. I try not to hurt feelings of those that are in the Army, because they also serve and their service is valued. Except the place is still good. You're still on the podium. After getting out of the Marine Corps, I went to Tacoma Community College, got into the EMS program there. So I worked in Seattle, worked EMS downtown Seattle, 7 p.m., 7 a.m. for Shepherd Ambulance. It was a eye-opening experience. It was back during the crack epidemic, so I've got a lot of experience in dealing with drug addiction and those issues and how to fit, and I know how we can fix these things. The issue I had with EMS, which was really a job that I liked, was that I was really, really bad at pediatric calls. Anytime I lost a pediatric patient or there was a child hurt, it would stay with me for weeks and I wouldn't sleep. So eventually I changed course and went into law enforcement, got hired on at the Washington State Department of Corrections. I spent 15 years behind the walls at the reception center, which is where I learned what was going on, actually a lot what was going on in our education system. When you've got grown men that have high school diplomas because the union decided to lower the standard and push through the system, but they can't read or do math, you can understand why they're in this, where they're at. Kids need these tools, right? We have got to ensure that when our kids leave public school system, they can read, write, and do math. I went to school here in Napa in the 70s. And most 7th and 8th graders are reading at a college level. We use phonics. I think we should look back at some of the things that worked in the past to fix the issues of the present.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. My name is Cyrus Javity. I'm not here only as your state representative, but also as a local entrepreneur who has actively contributed to creating quality, high quality jobs here on the coast. My commitment to boosting the local community is evident by my actions and my dedication. Yet our community continues to face significant challenges. They've been largely due to the mismanagement, misguided policies of the majority party. They've imposed restrictions on our community like the Habitat Conservation Plan, as well as the corporate activity tax that have stifled our local businesses and have eroded job opportunities. They have advocated for offshore wind energy projects that benefit big union deals at the expense of our local skilled workers and threaten our fisheries. Our education system continues to flounder under their leadership, with increased taxes failing to make it into our classrooms, leaving our students behind on national benchmarks, educational benchmarks. Oregon's budget has swollen to an unprecedented $120 billion, far outpacing states of a similar size, without corresponding improvements in public services. Promised funds from legalized marijuana intended to support addiction recovery programs have been misallocated, exacerbating our crisis in mental health and homelessness. Additionally, the housing crisis deepens, fueled by their policies. Red tape and failing infrastructure under their watch have prevented effective housing development, while property prices soar and inventory stays low. This crisis is further aggravated by new costly regulations on our fisheries, forestry, and dairy sectors that are vital to our local economy, but are belabored by extreme legislative measures. Since the decriminalization of hard drugs, we've seen a 1,200% increase in fentanyl-related overdose deaths, surging homelessness, and climbing crime rates, tangible outcomes of their legislative decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, it is evident that the current majority has consistently prioritized ideological purity over the practical needs of our communities. Their policies have not only neglected, but actively harmed the unique challenges facing the North Coast. The importance of having a representative in the Capitol that will represent both the interests of the right and the left is important. And thank you for your support and your trust.
Move right into the questions. And again, you're going to hear some repetition because folks felt like many of these questions were applicable across the races. So we'll start with Representative Jetty. What have you done or did you do in your case to prepare yourself for the steep learning curve that you faced when elected? And how do you plan to continue moving forward? And then I'll rephrase the question a little bit for those who are trying to get in that position.
Sure, great question. This is a tough job to really get prepared for. I don't think there's anything really analogous in the private sector that gets you ready to go to the state and oversee and try to wrap your head around all these projects and the different ways the government can be effective. But that being said, I got my undergraduate degree in accounting from Brigham Young University. It was a broad education. I think that uniquely prepared me to deal with a lot of the finance and budget questions that we see in state government. I've earned a degree as a doctor in dental surgery, and then have spent the last 15 years as a private practice owner, both hiring and employees and running a business here on the coast that requires me to be able to sign both the front and the back of the paycheck. So I understand how different policies of the state tends to jar over can affect the private economy as well as the public.
Glenn Gaither. I've got 3 decades of working in federal, state, and public service. I know how the government works. I've spent all my time since I retired, which was in 2019, looking into the issues that we face here in Oregon. The reason I got involved is because there were people in my own party that weren't telling me the truth or giving us facts about what's really going on. I believe in total transparency. Citizens need to know where every dollar goes. Citizens need to know what's actually taking place in our public schools, and they need to know what's going on with state funding. There have been a lot of issues in the last year or so where everybody's trying to find missing funding. 458 was missing from the Housing Authority. I think that's a huge mistake. We've got people that want to ask questions of their government. They put in public request forms so they can take a peek at something like the election, the prior election. Jackson County gentleman went to do that, and he was charged or asked to pay $1 million just to have access to public information. And I think that's wrong.
Thank you. I'm obviously a little bit younger, but I have capitalized on my time as much as I can. So I work for the New Charts Water District as a program manager in the civil service. I'm director of an economic development agency in the public service, and I run my own marketing agency on the side. It's small, but it gets it done. I wear a couple hats, as most folk here in the room do, and I turn towards community organizing as I adhere to love my home here. I first got involved advocating for the Oregon Health Plan and making sure that we protected it at the ballots here in Tillamook County. I've also been in the state legislature advocating for the Student Success Act. You mentioned the CAT earlier. I am proud to have raised funding for our community schools to improve the lot of our students here in rural counties. The CAT, which only affects businesses over $1 million, I believe, and our education packages that I helped push forward through lobbying through our state community colleges and our advocacy role through that, help push forward that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. This is a yes or no question. We'll start with you. Have you or would you support wind turbines off the Tillamook coast?
I believe the county commissioners addressed this really well, and I want to say that I am not running to represent the Democratic Party. I'm running to represent Tillamook County and Clatsop County and a little town of Clascodine. I believe that the wind turbines in their current state are an eyesore. They're really bad for the environment in oceans, that is. There are some new technologies coming around that I believe if you put them off of the marine reserves where they're outside of state waters and they're outside of state fisheries, there is an opportunity. However, we're not there yet, and it's going to take some time, probably at least another decade of innovation before we can get to that point. Thank you.
I'm also a no. I don't believe that we should be putting things up off of our coastline when the majority of citizens disagree with it. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, whether you're Republican or Democrat, nobody wants these things here. My concern is that just like with the HCP, our voices will not be heard and the state will do whatever it wants. We've got a governor that basically goes around and takes photo ops every day. She goes visit this place, she goes to visit that place, and does very little bit of the state business because she has state agencies that do that for her. Those state agencies are working against citizens and they're not listening to us. I'm a definite no.
I'm also no, I don't think the technology is there. I think groups like the Sierra Club, which represent or sponsor one of my opponents, are for it. They are willing to put ideological purity above what makes economic sense. They're willing to sponsor big union deals over local workers, and they don't care what happens with our fisheries. I think that Glenn's correct. The state will do what the state wants to do under the current leadership. And it's unfortunate, but we need representation in Salem. They'll continue to fight regardless of whether they think it's a losing battle for the economic needs here on the coast.
All right, we'll give you a chance to lead off with a question, Lynn. It's unfortunate that Oregon has closed primaries, keeping non-affiliated voters from voting. Where do you stand on opening primary races to non-affiliated voters?
This is something that, I thought about for a while. Everybody in this room here should be able to vote, not just for their party of choice, but the individual. We're all individuals, right? Under the Constitution, everybody has their own individual rights. I would like to see more engagement. I would like to see all the candidates in one voter's pamphlet so that everybody can look at the ideologies of the candidates and where they stand on the issues. I'm not a big fan of separating things and then having just Republicans on one side and then Democrats on the other, because if we issue out a voter's pamphlet to every single citizen in the state, we're going to get better voter turnout.
I agree. I think that the primary system should be open. I think you should be allowed to vote for any candidate in any party, and in both the primary and then, of course, in the general.
Thank you. I am in support of an open primary system. I'm originally from a state with an open primary system. And one of the things I want to say here is the only legitimate argument I've heard against an open primary is the idea that you're going to have people from different parties crossing over to choose the worst candidate. We have seen in data after survey collected on this, sorry, my degree's in political science. I apologize. The effect is mute. People do that in roughly equal proportions. And the amount of people who actually do that is below 5%. We do need open primaries in Oregon because it increases overall voter turnout and makes sure that when you pick up your voter pamphlet statement and you see everyone who's on there, you have the opportunity to vote for every single person. You may not like every single person, but at least you have the choice. Thank you.
All right. What would you have done differently to mitigate the lives lost in Tillamook County and in this case within your district during the pandemic? And what do you propose to do to be more prepared for the next pandemic? Start with you.
Thank you. I want to think about this from a state level perspective because our district encompasses Classic County, Classic County and Tillamook County. And one of the things that I think is the most important we could have, should have, and need to do at the state level is actually invest in our public health infrastructure. I used to serve as the staff volunteer coordinator for the volunteer program manager for the Emergency Volunteer Corps of Nahalem Bay, the organization whose volunteer supported our vaccination clinics here in Tillamook County. What we need to do, and I know firmly that what we need to do at the state level is we need to put more time and more investment into state epidemiology, more time into our county health departments, and more time into contact tracing, quite frankly, so that when people are exposed, they know very quickly, very effectively, that they have the choice on what to do next. If we do not have those basic elements in place, we are not preserving the health and safety of the public. And that's one of the fundamental first responsibilities of a state government. Thank you.
I think that, this is all hindsight now that we know a lot of the information. We know that, like, for example, the 6-foot rule, Dr. Fauci's actually come out now in public and they just invented that. There was no scientific basis for the 6-foot rule. We also know that the masking did not work. It may have prevented 1 or 2 people from getting a virus, but in general, the CDC even now agrees that masking didn't work. I would like to see more local control because what we did in Oregon is we closed down schools for 2 years and we caused a lot of children permanent damage as far as their education goes. There were kids that were seniors just starting their senior year that didn't graduate. We closed schools down for 2 years and a group of individuals that had a death rate of 0.01%. 2 children died. One was a newborn child with her heart torn outside of her chest, And another one, unfortunately, was a 15-year-old asthmatic. We didn't lose kids to this. Children were resilient to the virus.
Yeah, I think, what we didn't do well, is that we politicized COVID. You know, we didn't stick with the science. Too many of our leaders took it as an opportunity to listen to special interests like unions and other organizations that wanted to use it to their political advantage, whether it was based on science or not. And I think that led to a lot of loss of life. And, you know, for example, we saw organizations around the country, we saw in New York, California, where they were taking their cues from what the big unions wanted. And that led to people dying in nursing homes and hospitals not having access to care. What we need to do is expand the number of beds in Oregon so that we're ready. We're woefully short. We don't have enough. And we need to real-time tech so we know where the available beds are and where our available providers are. We need to increase the number of providers so we can respond immediately to a pandemic because it will come again.
Thank you. All right, Representative Javity, what will you do to help Tillamook County receive more of the infrastructure money that the governor has released, related to the creation of housing?
Okay, this is really frustrating because there has been money talked about and released, but because we're not important to the governor, because we're not important to the majority of the representatives and senators that work in the Willamette Valley, we don't get the money. I have done everything I can to bend over backwards to get us money, and we have gotten some. We've gotten millions of dollars for a few projects up and down to add additional housing. But what we need is to fix our failing infrastructure, and that's going to cost tens of millions of dollars that we need to get from the state. And we're gonna have to go back and continue to give them our shovel-ready projects and to get that money. And I'm in a good position to do that. I've made those relationships now with one term, my first term with the Ways and Means Committee, by showing them that I can be a good faith member of the House of Representatives, and they can trust me that I'll say what I do. So basically, just continue to lobby for it, because until we get it, we will not be able to expand housing anywhere in this district.
Part of the issue is cost. So I've done a little bit of research, and I know everybody's always talking about worker housing, low-income housing, and trying to get people sheltered. So for low-income housing, if you make more than $2,700 a month, you don't qualify. You can't get into that. So if you're making $3,500 a month, you automatically don't qualify for low-income housing. The bad part is that most places that rent want your income to be 3 times the rent. So if you're only the $1,500 apartment, you better make $4,500 a month. And in Tillamook, the median cost for rental is $2,675. So unless you're making $8,025 a month, you don't qualify to rent these places because the owners won't let you in. We've got to figure out a way to reduce the cost of rent. We've got to figure out a way to build cheaper. That's going to require a lot of deregulation.
Thank you. Housing is the #1 issue in this election, and Rockaway Beach spent a full year trying to hire a single firefighter because every applicant cannot find a home within the service area or within 5 minutes of the service area. This is an issue that affects our public services. This is an issue that affects our workforce. The #1 issue for employers in this county is having the workforce they need to be able to supply it, and that's why we need homes. In order to get homes, we need public subsidies in order to help drive down the costs of workforce housing in particular. We heard a lot about housing regulation in the county commissioners earlier today. That is really important. All of those rules that get put in place, that comes from the state legislature. All that red tape, all those environmental protections, all those public subsidies, those come from the federal government and from the state legislature combined. So when you think about someone who is able to impact that in the state legislature, you need someone who has an educational background in real estate property management and someone who is willing to work not just within their own party, but also across the aisle and actually demonstrate that leadership. I don't think we've got that in 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start with you. Technically a yes or no question. Should there be allowable walkouts from voting in the state legislature?
I believe that the current solution we have, where you have a total number of effectively walkout days that you can do, is probably the best solution that's constitutionally available to us right now. We have a tremendous amount of Oregon state senators in this election year and in the next election year who will not be able to run again because they broke those walkout rules. The problem is, if we prevent any walkouts whatsoever, there's a risk that we're going to go to the United States Supreme Court, and they're going to rule out our ballot initiative for being unconstitutional. The theory there is that when we elect people to represent us, we are giving them some of our First Amendment rights, and they need to have some way to justify that. With that, yes. Also with that, no, I do not support walkouts, but I think the current policy is probably the best we have. Thank you.
I tend to agree. It's a First Amendment issue. If we have a bill that comes through the House, for example, that is so horrendous that it's going to do a lot of damage, I think the best thing to do is to walk out to protect the citizens. That's the job of a legislator, not just to protect your constitutional rights, but also to protect your pocketbook. I know for a fact that one of the ways that the state wants to relieve the loss of revenues from the HCP is to take over private property tax. We have a lot of seniors in their homes that are barely making ends meet right now because of the cost of inflation. What we don't need is a state government that will take over property tax. I think a walkout is a constitutional option when it's absolutely necessary. It shouldn't be used lightly.
I don't disagree with both. I don't think a walkout's ever a good idea. I think that we're sent there to do a job. I think that we show up and we vote regardless of whether we think the issue is a good one or a bad one. I think when we have walkouts, it empowers special interest groups to blackmail and hold unduly influence legislators to do what they want. I think the braver thing to do is to show up and vote no, knowing that the majority party is going to push through an idea that will be harmful to the state of Oregon. And I think they need to be held accountable for that. That's who pushed the bill through, not the minority who fought against it. And I think that honestly, a better rule would be instead of 10 unexcused absences, which was a joke in the House of Representatives because you could just ask for an excused absence and it was given in the Senate. It was a little more difficult. I think make it a simple majority. You need to have 31 members in the House, and then you can have a vote. You don't need to wait for 2/3. And if that's the case, then the majority will always have their 35 or 31 votes, and they can vote however they want. We need to hold the majority accountable for the decisions they make and not blame the minority for not doing enough.
Thank you. If you'll hold the mic. How do you know what your constituents need?
A great question. I mean, there's a variety of ways that my constituents have reached out. They'll stop me at the grocery store. They'll come into the office while they're getting their filling done. They will send me emails. They'll call all hours of the night. So it's pretty clear what when a certain topic really bugs somebody, what the problem is. Right now, the unemployment service at the state level is not serving the people of Oregon very well, and so I'm getting a ton of phone calls about that. The job is the easiest when you think you know what the majority of your district wants you to do. The job is the hardest when there is a small group that feels like they are not well represented and they're begging you to stand up for them. It's very easy when the cards stack up in your favor, and so it's hard, and so you don't always know, and you try your best to reach out and go to coffees and go to sporting events and be seen in the community and be available.
Personally, I go out into the community a lot. I've talked to a lot of business owners up and down the coast, mostly up in Seaside, because that's where I go. That's a huge, everybody knows that's a huge tourism draw. When I talk to business owners, the biggest issue they have is finding employees, and not just employees, but employees that will stay. We have a drug epidemic in this state right now that's affecting our workforce. The epidemic affects everybody between the ages of 18 and 45 and younger and older, right? But that's where the main target is. That's our workforce. I've got employers telling me that when they go to try to find employees, they'll show up for 2 or 3 days and then they're gone for the rest of the week, and this cycle repeats. we've got to make sure that our students leave school with the ability and the tools that they need to find those jobs and do well with them. And we've got to straighten up and clean up our communities, all the crime that's taking place out there, because that is a cancer that will destroy everything.
I think there's three parts to this. The first is that you need to accept that we have very diverse communities here in Tillamook County, Clatsop County, and the city of Pascagoula. We have areas that are very rural, very timber heavy. We have areas that are very tourism heavy, like Rockaway Beach. And sometimes we have to recognize that the vote for one piece of legislation is not going to appeal to every single constituency we have. We have to think about what's best for the communities as a whole. We have to think about what's best for the minutia of how our economies work together, how all three pillars of our economic stool, natural resource jobs, the service economy, and our tourism sector work together. The second part is we need to be available to people in order to actually facilitate conversations. So when people come to us, that is amazing. The problem is the third part. Most people don't actually engage with their state government. Most people don't actually engage in the political process as outside of voting. So one of the things that I mentioned at the very top was that I spent over 1,000 door knocks. We get out to people and ask what they want directly by bugging them.
Okay. We'll start with you, Glenn. How do you feel about Americans uniting behind the Constitution to call an Article 5 Convention of the States?
I'm a Marine. No, in the Marine Corps, I don't know if they do this in the other branches, because when I went to the Army, they were like, they just assumed that I was ready to go. But we do history class. Every Marine goes through history class on a daily basis from the get-go. And you also learn the Constitution. They drill that into Marines. They did in the 80s, because at the time we were called the president's own. If you notice at the White House, the guys that are guarding the doors are wearing Marine dress corps blue. I'm a constitutionalist at heart. I believe in all of our Bill of Rights. I believe that those need to be protected at all costs, because without them, we don't have a voice and we don't have any rights to fight back. Right now, the state's ignoring its citizens and the voices of its citizens, and that needs to stop.
Yeah, the Constitution has, creates this avenue that allows the states to call for this special convention. And there's a lot of energy behind this right now, and has been for some while. And there is some good that can be done with it, but there's also the potential risk if a convention is called for the federal government to kind of go off the rails on every special project that they want to. So I think we need to approach it with care. But I think that if it's what the people want, I fully support it. I mean, this is why that was put into the Constitution, so that the states would have a mechanism to check the federal government when they felt like that check was necessary.
So one nice thing about the Article 5 initiative that's being put forward is it has supporters and detractors from all across the aisle. There are people, especially people with well-established interests in Congress, and be clear, this is a congressional issue. This is not a state legislative issue, but we have a role in deciding on whether or not this happens in the state legislature. And I have concerns like everyone else. What will happen to critical programs like Medicaid and Social Security? Or on the converse side, what's going to happen to our budgeting cycle? But I also see some of the promise here. And honestly, this is going to be the first question that I don't have an answer for personally. It really depends on what the people who are in power at the time want to say that they want to do with the Constitutional Convention. And do I believe that my Oregon delegation will stick up for us in that way, stick up for Tillamook County in the way that they need to? Thank you.
Hold the mic, and we'll go to what are the top 3 things that you will do if elected?
There's 3 issues. Really, there's housing, education, and healthcare are the biggest ones, because those are the ones that drive whether or not we have the people we need to care for our seniors. Those are the ones that drive, do we have a place to live? Can someone who graduates from Tillamook Bay Community College actually maintain and keep a living in their community and choose to stay here and live with dignity? That requires good jobs. Do we actually have a quality health and childcare system where if someone is choosing to work because they have to, where they know that their kid will be safe and secure and learning all those pre-kindergarten skills that they need. Those are all three topics that the state legislature has started to address, but we really need to start hammering home for coastal communities like ours. Thank you.
So my focus is going to be pretty much on three things. Fixing a broken educational system by any means necessary that our children are armed with the tools that they need to succeed in life. And that may mean stepping away from the public school system and offering children another option. Everybody talks about systemic racism. I think the biggest thing that I see out there that would look or appear as systemic racism is keeping migrant children or children of color trapped in inner city schools that have failed them generation after generation after generation. There's a reason why we have poverty levels as high as they are in the inner cities, because the education system fails. The other issue that we're facing right now is the drug epidemic. I don't think anybody's taking that thing seriously enough, right? They made some changes to Measure 110. Those changes aren't even going to take effect until the 10th of October, I think, or 7th of October. Why are we waiting? We had a COVID pandemic, which was an emergency, and boom, they were right on it. We don't need to spend any more time waiting to deal with these issues. We need to arrest the guys that are moving the drugs, and that's the cartels and the gangs that we have in Clatsop County that are poisoning our kids, and they are there in force and they are unchecked.
They're waiting because of law enforcement in the county's requested to wait until October. If I'm reelected, what I plan to do is focus on housing infrastructure dollars into the community. We absolutely need the millions of dollars. So whether that's through legislation that directly appropriates that money to the communities on the North Coast, or whether it's through capital construction asks, I plan to get more money for our communities up and down the coast. Second, expand healthcare access, continue to look to increase beds, continue to increase providers. And then finally, push back against continued regulations on our dairy, fishery, and forestry sectors. Try to find a way to replace the hole that's going to be left by the HCP. Try to find a way to make whole all the private sector bloggers and fishers and dairymen that are wondering how they're going to survive in a future that's getting changed constantly by the majority party and their regulations that never seem to stop.
And now we'll move into the last question. With so much negativity in the political world, name one positive thing about your challenger. You don't have to like that. You need to acknowledge something positive about them and their views. And I'm going to ask that each of you respond to both of the other candidates. So, Representative Javity.
Sure, I'll start with Logan. I think the nice thing about Logan is he's a young kid. He's got a lot of energy, he's got a lot of hope, and he really does care about the community, wants to serve it. He puts a lot of effort into his campaign, and I appreciate that about him. With Glenn, here's a guy who served his nation faithfully, and somebody also who is in this phase of his life where he's not ready to just retire into the sunset and live off of his savings, but he wants to continue to give back. And he cares deeply enough that he wants to sign up for a job that some days I wonder why anybody would sign up for. So, kudos to both of them. I appreciate them running. They both run a clean campaign. I value their insights, and I think they both have a lot of great ideas.
Well, we know that there's a doctor shortage in Oregon. So every dentist and every doctor that we can get our hands on, we need, especially dentists. Okay, so he does a very critical job in the community. I know what it's like. I've been working in the medical field, EMS. You work with doctors. When I worked in the prison system, I was working in the infirmary 2 days a week, so I know what that's like. Being a doctor is a full-time, fully consuming job. It takes all your energy. As far as Logan goes, the kid's got his whole life ahead of him. He has got years and years and years to figure things out, learn, grow. and get seasoned, because life will beat you up. By the time you're 40 or 50 years old, you kind of got a grip of what's really going on. But until you've had to pay the mortgage, pay the taxes, raise the children and stuff, you won't get that seasoning. But he's heading in that direction. I think he'll do a great job.
Thank you, Beth. Full-heartedly, I really do believe that Representative Javity cares for not just his community, but for his patients and for every civic body he has been with in the past. When I look at some of the things that he does, yes, we have policy disagreements, but I truly believe that he is in it for the right reasons. When I look at Mr. Gaither, I really appreciate your dedication. Again, to the public service. That's what we're all here for. We're all here to serve the public. And what I admire about Glenn is he has had a career of dedicated, true service to everyone. So thank you both so much. I really appreciate you.
It was lovely, thank you. That question will be at every forum from here on out. I love that. And now we're in the closing parts. Normally I'm better than this. Who started? Logan? Okay, so we will have Representative Javity then start with his closing remarks, and we have 1 minute.
All right, maybe I got into politics because I got tired of the far right and the far left agendas that seem to consistently want to prioritize their ideological purity over the practical needs of our community. Their policies and their policy proposals not only neglected, but they were actively harming the unique challenges that face communities like the North Coast. The importance of having a representative in the Capitol that will hold those voices accountable is more clear now than it has ever been. My record shows that I'm committed to real solutions and to sensible governance. Tonight, as we look to the future, we must choose leaders who will advocate for and implement policies that will genuinely benefit us all. We need a government that serves its people with transparency and effectiveness. This is a tough job, and I appreciate all the support and trust that you've placed into me, and I'm looking forward to serving you again in the future.
So for me, this isn't so much a job as a mission. I grew up in Oregon, right? My entire family worked in the timber industry, whether they're logging or they're working out at Kiwanis, Brownsville, or Back Mill, or they're log truck drivers. That was what my entire family did. I was the odd one. I was the odd one out. It was like, hey, I'm leaving. I'm going in the military. See everybody later. They all stayed here and duked it out. Those jobs and the revenue that comes from timber is the wealth of Oregon. Our natural resources are the wealth of Oregon. Both of my opponents have said that, well, they'll try to find other revenues streams to fill in the gap of the HCP. I'm not ready to quit fighting for the HCP against it. I think that we've got some of the schools that are starting to file lawsuits against the state for this thing, like the school, Jewel School District. And I think that we need to get legislators behind these people to find them the legal help that they need to push back against the HCP and make it history and then come up with a better plan. So I'm all about a strong economy, a great education for our children, and safer communities. Those are my goals. And we're sorely lacking those things in Oregon right at the moment.
Thank you all. I firmly believe that we need to expand affordable quality health and childcare and create jobs that pay living wages so our communities can thrive, not just survive. And I show up. When I worked in the legislature, my opponents skipped out on the vote for a housing bill that would only affect Tillamook County. Empowering them alone with new opportunities is a pilot project for rural communities. I would have proudly supported expanding multifamily housing instead of dodging the vote. He voted this way 61 times in the short session alone. So why do I care? Well, I grew up in a reform mining town. I remember a giant pit carved into the mountainside that would fill to the brim with water so toxic that when it overflowed, the entire drinking supply would be taken out. The water is so bad, the government has to clean and pump out the water. It was the natural resource workers who stood up to out-of-state corporate polluters to protect our supply for the long term. And it's this experience that created a guiding principle for me. We can live off the land and also not destroy it. We can work together as a community to improve our lot for the next generation. I'm Logan Lacey. I'm running to be your next state representative, and I look forward to earning your vote. Thank you.
Big round of applause to all of the candidates. And to the folks online and to those of you that were able to make it today, these work because of you, and thank you for your thoughtful questions. And we will see you next October for the general election vote. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the candidate. If you have an AAUW question, please feel free. Thank you very much.